Whether you like to admit it or not, we love to play. And indeed, playing underlies most of our favorite activities in life, from playing that game that you love on your phone or your computers, to engaging in your favorite sports activities, or even a night out with your friends over the weekend. Even as adults, we never outgrow playing. And there's just something about playing that really marks itself as a part of human condition. It is so hard and remiss to find anybody who doesn't like playing. And understandably so, we feel a great sense of bliss and happiness when we play. But why exactly is that? And this is really a question I've been wondering about lately, that eventually led me to the discovery of two great psychologists who were on the quest of solving this very question. Firstly, psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott was also perplexed about the mystery of playing and what makes it so intrinsic to a part of our human nature. And he sought to really get to the bottom of it by studying us humans at our most playful state when we were young. And what he essentially did was he spent many years studying infants as they're playing about. And what he eventually discovered from his observation and work was that something very remarkable was going on when infants were playing. Infants were actually creating a third world when they were playing between the real world and the imaginary world, a world in between. And this world was essentially a transitionary world. It was actually a world where the infant was discovering itself for the first time. It was actually a space of self-discovery. See, the background of this idea really came from the psychological belief that when an infant was born, when we were born as babies, we didn't actually at the very beginning have a sense of self. Rather, we saw ourselves as merged with our mothers. We did not see ourselves as a separate object. It was almost like the entire universe revolved around this omnipotent figure, our mothers, who essentially provided all the conditions of our survival. If we were hungry, we would have milk or food. Essentially, our mothers were our universe. But of course, reality begins to intrude. Sometimes when we're hungry, food doesn't come automatically. Sometimes food comes late. Or let's say if our diapers needed changing, it didn't get changed immediately. So there's a sort of disconnect between our sense of reality and essentially what reality really is. And if you think about it, the disconnect between what we wanted and also what we got, where I suppose we were disappointed, was actually in essence the first game we played. It allowed us to realize that, in fact, we were not just our mothers, that our whole universe was not just merged with our mothers. Rather, we were a separate object. And this sort of first unexpected and unintended game is really the foundation of self-discovery. But beyond that, as a child grows and begins to play a lot of games with their vast imaginations, as we engage in our space and we start to create all these games, we are also making sense of the world in a very natural way, and more importantly, making sense of ourselves. So as we are endowing meaning in our games, the various games that we play as children, we are actually further discovering ourselves, and through our experiences of playing, realizing our own existence, and of course, abating in the process of our own developments and growth. Now, this might sound very complicated, but in short, what Winnicott was saying is we play to allow ourselves to interact with the world and continually find out who we are. And that playing is in fact a very intrinsic part of who we are, in essentially helping us in discovering who exactly we're meant to be. And the essence of playing, according to Winnicott, that makes it so amazing an exercise, besides what I've just mentioned, is the fact that what we have is this third space, this transitionary space, where we're not constrained by judgment or really anything at all in reality. When we're engaging in play, we are at our most creative, totally unconstrained, where we can use our imagination and immerse ourselves to really connect with ourselves and discover more about ourselves, rather than, if we could, in real life doing other tasks. And that the play that we engage ourselves in really allows for maximum creativity, totally unconstrained and completely free of associations, the space that allows us to grow. So in totality, what Winnicott is suggesting is that we play because we're able to find ourselves. We're able to really discover ourselves, to access the chaos of our unconscious and find the hidden treasures of who we are. And from this perspective, when you think about engaging in some of your own plays in life, perhaps the difference from other tasks in reality is the fact that it really allows you to be your most creative, and a big part of his enjoyment really is finding out more about yourself in this unrestrained state, this state without the rules of reality. But there remains a question. Not all games are so unconstrained. In fact, there are many games that we know, many activities that we engage in on playing where there are a lot of rules. For example, a game of football, there are rules of what you can and cannot do. And of course, perhaps a card game, a lot of very fixed rules. Winnicott's idea, though brilliant, would seemingly be unable to explain the enjoyment that we feel when we play games that are heavily ruled. And indeed, Winnicott was never really given a chance to look into these other sorts of games that we might get ourselves into, as he passed away. Unfortunately, the Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi began studying these ruled games and came to his own very interesting conclusion that was sort of on the other spectrum of the conclusions drawn by Winnicott. Now, Csikszentmihalyi studied all the games that we actually played in all these different cultures from this anthropological point of view. And what he realized very quickly was that a lot of games that we play that we enjoy throughout the cultures were actually heavily ruled. And it's sort of strange if you think about it, that you can enjoy something that's so constrained by rules. Yet we know some of our most favorite games are exactly like that. And eventually he came to the conclusion that the reason why such games are so enjoyable, and as an extension why we love playing, wasn't so much about finding yourself, as Winnicott might suggest, but it's also about losing yourself. For Csikszentmihalyi, when we start to play, that's a moment when we decide to get into a game. And when those games have fixed rules, what is essentially happening is that the players of the game have agreed that there are defined boundaries to these activities that we're about to get ourselves into. And as a result, anxiety is actually kept at bay. So for example, if we were playing a dice game, we know with the dice there's potentially only 6 outcomes. There won't be a 7th outcome. Or for example, something totally tragic, like someone could suddenly die or perhaps contract an illness, God forbid. We can expect exactly what are the potential outcomes. We might not be able to predict whether we will win or lose the game, but at least we know the possible outcomes that might exist. And because we can see the possibilities of the game in our state of play, we can find a balance between the chaotic worries of life and its challenges, as well as the boredom of doing absolutely nothing. And even if everything goes wrong in our game, and suppose we don't win, well, it is a game after all. We can accept it. It isn't real life. So in an absolute contrast to Winnicott, Csikszentmihalyi sees playing not as an act of finding yourself, but truly the joy of losing yourself. When you're playing a game, he believes what is actually happening. You're drawing your unself-conscious attention to the forefront, and your presence and your actions transcend everything else. Because you're fully aware of the parameters of the game and all its possibilities, as well as the fact that it is a game so entirely detached from reality, you are able to lose all sense of yourself and be the most present you could ever be. Just entirely focus on the activity at hand. In a way, you lose a sense of all the gibberish that's constantly in your mind in real life, and all you care about is just the game that you're currently playing. And according to Csikszentmihalyi, this state is so intensely pleasurable that it really marks at some of the best moments of our lives. We start to experience, according to him and in his own terms, a sense of flow. This state where everything just sort of happens and exudes from you naturally as you're engaged in it. And indeed, it is this sense of flow that we should seek to find in our work and life as well when we pursue our passion, so that work may also feel like a sense of flow. So combining both amazing psychologists and their views, the reason why we love play is that it very much allows us to experience ourselves in very interesting ways. On the one hand, ultimate playing with your full creativity engaged allows you to discover more about yourself and actualize yourself. And indeed, when you think of the many moments when we're engaged in the certain games that we play, we start to realize that, oh, we are capable of that. And perhaps you discovering a hidden side to you, and this is something you have felt ever since you were a kid, to other games that take away the chaos of life and all of its anxiety and worries, and just allows you to truly lose yourself so that you may actually be presently involved in activity and experience a sense of flow in your life. Perhaps only one of the few opportune moments in your daily life when you're allowed to actually experience that, because we're constantly in our head with all this mental stress and worries that we have. So our addiction to play is in fact very natural. It is very much a part of who we are and marks itself a unique paradox of our human nature.